Verrückte Salt. The White-Eyed Child. There are a few things I want to get out of the way before I tell this story. First, there are mentions of suicide. I don't go into detail, just out of respect for the individual involved and their family. Second, I will also be talking about depression and anxiety. The story is extremely dark, but also terrifying. I have never had something like this happen again, thank goodness. To begin, I need to tell you what exactly a white-eyed child is. There's not a lot of information about them, but from the research I've done, they're messengers of death. Another name for them is angels of death. A lot of elderly people tend to see them right before they die. It is also said that if you see one, it means either you or someone you know is about to pass on. At the time of the sighting, I had no knowledge about these children or their meanings. I didn't connect the dots until later on, the dots being seeing the child and then the death that followed. So, a little backstory. I got a job at this retirement home after I had to move out of my parents' house at the age of 18. Finding employment was proving difficult, so my best friend's mother, Lola, did me a solid and got me a job at the place she worked. The building was old. It was formerly a train station before it was converted into a retirement home. Since it was where many people lived for the remainder of their lives, there were a lot of deaths over the years, which meant there were shadow figures. I remember asking my coworker about them, and she said it wasn't uncommon to spot one in the corner of your eye. She told me not to worry about it. They were harmless. That was about the extent of the paranormal activity I had encountered. However, while working there, I had some severe anxiety, something I had never suffered from before. It probably didn't help that the environment was pretty toxic. The boss was sexist, and the kitchen was filled with middle-aged women with nothing better to do than gossip. Now, it wasn't my first time working in a less than ideal place, but at my old job, which just so happened to be Walmart, I never felt anxiety like this. It was always dread. I actually had my first anxiety attack working at that retirement home. It was scary and out of the blue. Probably one of the worst experiences of my life, and I never had anxiety again after I left. Anyway, the day I saw the white-eyed child was just a regular work day. I worked as a dishwasher, but I also helped prep, mainly peeling potatoes and helping with other little things. So, I was on my way to the pantry to grab something when this little girl popped up in front of me. It startled me so badly that I stopped dead in my tracks, half expecting to mow a little girl down, but she was gone just as soon as she had appeared. I remember glancing around the kitchen, seeing if my other coworkers spotted the little girl, but they were all carrying on with their tasks as if nothing had happened. I recall some of her details. She wore a white olden day dress, blonde pigtails, a white nightcap, and white eyes. I might have only seen her for a millisecond, but I'll never forget how her eyes had no irises or pupils. To describe the dish pit, it was in the shape of a U. Beside my workstation was a door that led out to the dining room. The door had a small window. This is important to the story. The large windows in the dining room overlooked the street in front of the building. It was around 2 p.m. when I spotted red and blue flashing lights in that little window. My coworker came in shortly after in tears. I asked her what was wrong, and she informed me a resident had taken their life. For some reason, I decided to go out to the kitchen to see that the entire street was filled with fire trucks, ambulances, and police. Again, I won't go into detail, but I will say it was horrible. I knew who the resident was. They were kind, they were caring, and they were a wonderful human being. Their passing weighed heavily on us all, making working at that place even harder. I'm unsure how to describe this next part, but the atmosphere felt heavy. Not sad, but evil. I know I sound insane, but it was like on top of being sad for our friend, it was also like something had taken up residence in that building, like it was feeding off of our misery. There were a lot of deaths following this passing, a lot of health problems, and even the employees were suffering from the effects. I fell into a deep depression that I'm still suffering from, although it has been something I've been struggling with for a while. Anyway, that is the story of the white-eyed child. It's incredibly dark and does not have a happy ending, but I will never forget it. I will say that if you or someone you know is suffering, please reach out. I know I sound like a broken record, but from one broken person to another, you're not alone. And more importantly, don't be ashamed of reaching out. You're not weaker for admitting you need help. You're a heck of a lot stronger for it. Alright, I could go on and on about mental health stuff, but thanks for reading. I would love to find out the history of that property where the restaurant was located. I believe the white-eyed girl spirit you saw may have been a demon. Either something had happened on that property before it was a restaurant, or someone brought a negative entity into the restaurant, and it decided not to leave. I believe in these negative entities, as I've been 2 places in my life where I felt this presence. I'm so glad you're no longer working at that location. The entity didn't feel nefarious, if that makes sense. She startled me, but I don't think she was demonic. Just something else. Either way, the fact that she appeared, and then a couple weeks later the passing happens. Heck of a coincidence. Yeah, the only reason I mentioned it being a demon is because so many people in the past few years have mentioned entities with white eyes, and they turned out to be demons. Sometimes demons don't appear malevolent at first. I know when people play with the Ouija board, they bring something through that appears benevolent, but soon after it turns malevolent. That's so strange. I'm glad you're no longer working there. Fair enough. I saw her back in 2016, and I only connected the dots about seeing her and the death a few years after it had happened. Hopefully that made sense. As for no longer working there, I'm with you. Lola ended up working there for a while longer after I left. She told me about many other bad things, like the place was cursed. I'd hate to know what would have happened to me if I hadn't left when I did. I have no idea if this paragraph made sense. I'm super tired and thinking is hard. LOL. Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Since your coworker mentioned other bad things that happened, I get a feeling that whoever was at that location before it became a restaurant maybe had indulged in nefarious practices. If you like listening to stories read by an actual person, look no further. That's right, I will never utilize an AI voice to tell these stories. Please support this channel by hitting like and subscribing. Yours truly, Verrückte Salt.